On today's show, was the James Harden trade worth the swing? I've made episodes recently on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, but how about the third star in the equation, James Harden, who was added to the Clippers this year? Was the swing worth it? Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Still in Cancun Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA and just finished my 19th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA sports, NBA, and LA Clipper content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And I want you to let me know, was the swing at James Harden worth it? Now, after a season, we're going to be talking about how the basketball fit looked, the risk and what we gave up, and how that's aged, and then the future of the move. Because the move, any trade you make is not just about 1 year, or is it? We'll talk about that in this episode. And this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba. All right, Clipper Nation, hope you had a good weekend as we begin the month of June. Almost halfway through 2024. That scares me. Time is going by way too fast. It needs to really slow down because June, you kidding me? Anyway, sadly, the Clippers still aren't playing in June. Only 1 year we were playing in June, and that was 2021, where the season was delayed and the playoffs were going on in July. But one day, hopefully, we'll get there. Now, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the James Harden move. Let's just begin where it all began. The Clippers, the 2-1-3 era. They've wanted a point guard, mainly 2-1-3 themselves and Ty Lue, for a long time. When the Clippers lost to the Denver Nuggets in the bubble, everyone was saying, well, they lacked a true point guard to get Kawhi and Paul George easier shots. It felt like too much of the creation was coming from Lou Williams, Kawhi, and Paul George, all of which were score-first guys. And the point guards they had were Reggie Jackson and Patrick Beverley. So I thought that was just a narrative, and that the main reasons that we lost to Denver were, number one, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard went cold when we needed him most. Number two, the rest of our team went cold when we needed it most. And number three, Glenn Rivers consistently leaving Montrezl Harrell to guard Jokic with no adjustment. So that was the problem for me, was, okay, we got rid of our coach. That's a good thing. And then hopefully Kawhi and Paul George just play clutcher when we need it most. But let's have Paul George hopefully stay healthier in the regular season to get him, more accustomed to playing with Kawhi and ready for those situations. And in 2021, we traded Lou Williams for Rajon Rondo, which was our first attempt to get a true point guard in the door. And there's nobody more true than Rajon Rondo. He is pass first to the tee, floor general. And here's the thing. There's a lot of revisionist history on the Rondo move. Lou Williams at the time, and I felt this way, and I would have told you this had I been the host of this show. You can go back and check my personal channel and see what I was saying. Lou Williams, it had gotten a bit redundant. We had Kawhi, we had a healthy Paul George, we had Reggie Jackson that was already doing a lot of creation, and then it was kind of holding back the playing time of a Terrence Mann and a Luke Kennard. And every time Lou Williams got the ball in 2021, it felt like he was trying to make a play, which doesn't sound like a bad thing, but it does when you have better players in the team and he's just aging and not playing defense or rebounding at all. And so I felt, you know what, I'd rather you just play Kennard and Terrence Mann more, and Lou Williams just feels redundant. We get Rondo. He has a great regular season, has a really solid first 4 games of that first round against Dallas, and then you started to see that he just couldn't get by guys anymore, and he's never been a very good shooter. So he never really improved the jump shot. Everybody's sagging off and staying home on the shooters. So he's not really creating advantages anymore. Then defensively, he wasn't really showing much at all. And that's putting it nicely. So he didn't play anymore after that. After about game 3 of the conference finals. And it actually helped our team, though, because he was so bad that it allowed the Luke Kennards and the Terrence Manns and the Pat Bevs and Reggie Jacksons all to play and make an impact their own way. And Lou Williams, he might have been good enough to stay in the rotation but take away from someone else. But we let go of Rondo after that, right? Bring in Eric Bledsoe. He's not a true point guard, but that was kind of a wash of a year because we didn't have Kawhi. Now, 2023 offseason, or before the 2023 season, we got John Wall. That was our second attempt at trying to get this true point guard. But John Wall never really took Reggie Jackson's starting spot, and he was a shell of his former self. So that didn't really work. Then we go to point Terrence Mann, and that looked okay. And then Paul George and Marcus Morris and the fellas start basically recruiting Russell Westbrook to the media. And Lawrence Frank was never about Russell Westbrook. He said he wanted a point guard that could shoot and defend. Russ gives you the defend, but the shoot, that's not Russell Westbrook when you describe a point guard like that. We get Russell Westbrook against what Lawrence Frank wants because the season was already kind of a disaster last year. And obviously Paul George got hurt and then Kawhi got hurt. So then there was a bunch of chatter all of a sudden this summer that we needed to get, have more talent on the roster. We weren't talented enough to win. But the randomest thing is just, here's what I was saying. When did this narrative start that we need to all of a sudden get more talented when we literally lost to the Suns mainly because Kawhi and Paul George were hurt? The same Suns team that took the champion Nuggets to 6 games. And then all of a sudden there was talk on Twitter that we need to get more talented. We need to get a third star in the mix. And they were saying the main reason was to alleviate what could be a hole from Kawhi Leonard and Paul George getting hurt throughout the regular season, which is valid. It's totally valid. It really is. So let's talk about James Harden, right? I was against the James Harden trade, as everybody knows, because James Harden just leaves a little bit to be desired in the playoffs at the end of the last hurdle. I mean, that's not to be confused with saying that he's bad in the playoffs, he's a playoff choker, all the narratives attached to James Harden, because a lot of them are untrue. He hasn't won a championship, and he has had stinkers in playoff games, absolutely. But the fact that to say that he can't help you in the playoffs is crazy. So the last couple of seasons, mainly after the injury with Brooklyn, 2022, he looked poor in the playoffs. He looked unhealthy. He looked like a shell of himself, a declining version, and he looked very sad in Game 6 against the Miami Heat in 2022. Then in 2023, he had some very good games in the playoffs, including Games 1 and 4 against the Celtics, and then Game 5 he wasn't even bad, and then Game 6 and 7 he laid an egg. So I was thinking to myself, look, I don't want to give up too much for a guy that I don't trust in the playoffs, despite how much better he can make us in the regular season. I think all we really need is healthy Kawhi and Paul George. Let's not give up stuff. And then what's going to happen to Russell Westbrook if we get James Harden? Those are my main concerns. We get James Harden. We end up not trading too much for him, right? And we'll talk about that in the next segment. But immediately, the basketball fit looked weird because it was like, did we bring Russell Westbrook in to be our point guard? Or did we bring James Harden in to be our point guard? Because James Harden in the last 7 years of his career leading up to this year has been a point guard. He's not been a shooting guard playing off the ball. So any Russell Westbrook fans or people that were defending Russ saying that Harden was going to play off of him, that wasn't going to be the case. It was never going to be the case. So we started to see that it was just too many cooks in the kitchen in that starting lineup, those first 5 games of them together. James Harden was kind of deferring, and then when he would get the ball, he would just hold it a lot, and everybody would be standing around watching. And then Kawhi was deferring. Paul George, weirdly, was the only one being aggressive in that stretch. And then we made the change before that game against Houston in the in-season tournament where we benched Russell Westbrook and sold it as Russell Westbrook sacrificed. But Lon Murray said himself, and I believe him, that Russell Westbrook got benched. And obviously he wasn't happy about it. But after that, it allowed James Harden to really do his thing, and you saw that you got a guy to take the ball out of 2-1-3's hands, and the basketball fit looked really good. We went on a stretch that was the best of any one of the best stretches of any team in the league. 26-5, had the number 1 seed, and it looked like James Harden was the perfect fit, taking the ball away from Kawhi and Paul George, getting him more spot-up jumpers wide open than they've ever had. But it did technically take the ball out of their hands, especially Paul George. But that's what they wanted. That's essentially what they wanted, right? The thing about it is it hurt Russell Westbrook, for sure. And obviously Bones Highland, who was taken out of the rotation after that. He was great with Norman Powell. He was great with Ivica Zubac. I think Kawhi and Paul George were just as good with or without James Harden. You could argue even better because they were getting more of a role. But their lives were made easier offensively, I would say. It's just about rhythm. It's just about how much do you want them to have the ball versus Harden, the touch distribution. But the basketball fit looked pretty good. The only thing I'll say is it made the team slower and worse defensively. That's what it did. But the basketball fit looked pretty solid. It just was serious sacrifice needed from Russell Westbrook. Essentially demotion. But we never really got to see it in the playoffs. We never got to see Kawhi Leonard play with James Harden and Paul George in the postseason with a healthy version to see how far we could go and how great the basketball fit really was with all that experience. Because at the end of the day, yes, we were older, but we were more experienced. I mean, James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, there aren't that many more experienced cores in the NBA playoffs. You got teams like the Mavericks, who's got one NBA champion, and Luka's made one conference finals, and then Gafford, PJ Washington, Derrick Jones. These guys have not, Josh Green, Dante Exum. These guys, I mean, Dante Exum actually was with Utah for some of those playoff runs, but he wasn't playing big minutes. Like Jaden Hardy, these guys are playoff virgins, a lot of them. So, it's just unfortunate. We never got to see it. So the basketball fit, I would give it a B+ at the end of the day. But now let's talk about the swing. Was it worth the risk? Was there a risk? You might be thinking, what risk is he talking about? Well, let's talk about it coming up. I got to tell you a little something about LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I've never personally hired on LinkedIn, but I've been hired on LinkedIn. And that's one of my go-to places to go when I'm trying to look for job openings. Because LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. And they also know that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. Just post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. A free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, so talking about what the Clippers gave up, I remember, that night when it was happening, I was so scared the Clippers were going to trade Terrence Mann because there was a whole thing that, Daryl Morey wasn't going to give James Harden up if he didn't get Terrence Mann. Eventually, what was traded was, we also got PJ Tucker, we have to remember, and the $11 million that nobody wants attached to his name, the contract that he's getting. For Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, KJ Martin, a 2028 unprotected first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, a 2029 pick swap, and an additional first-round pick from the Thunder. So, let's talk about that. Marcus Morris we wanted to get rid of. Robert Covington was injured throughout this season. Of course, we wanted to see him play, and he got up to a really good start to the season with us, those first 3 games, but he was injured for the Sixers. So, I mean, we didn't really lose much there except his expiring contract. And then Nicholas Batum, who was very solid for the Sixers and kind of had like a revival of a season because he was a little bit on the declining side in 2023. And I thought he did better this season whenever I watched him. And in the postseason, he had better games than he shot poorly against Phoenix in 2023. But the main thing that we lost there is, one, the expiring contracts, and two, the depth at the four. And would you rather have the depth at the four or James Harden? James Harden, no doubt about it. The depth at the four thing, it hurt us in the sense that Kawhi had to play up the entire season, and it felt like a lot of defensive responsibility. But it felt like an even trade-off when you had James Harden taking away offensive responsibility from him, and then he could just like have to have more of a defensive responsibility. But ideally, you don't want that either. So, I mean, did it contribute to his... I talked about that in the last episode. Did it contribute to his knee inflammation? I don't know. And I don't want to make it seem like it's James Harden's fault somehow that Kawhi got hurt. You know, at the end of the day, Kawhi got hurt when we didn't have him and then when we did have him. But, man, it would have been nice to just have more good defenders out there. It's just like, how much better do you think our team would have been better before the trade? I don't think so in the regular season. And considering Kawhi got injured in the playoffs, then it wouldn't have made a difference. It would have been worse in the playoffs too. So there's no way really you can tell me, unless you really believe in Russell Westbrook, Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington. The other guy that I didn't mention there really was KJ Martin, who we got in an attempt to get younger and faster, to play with the Terrence Manamir Coffees and Bones Highlands of the world. We were trying to have some younger players around Kawhi and Paul because they didn't get to the rim enough, and we were a jump shooting team that looked aging and injured. So that's why we kind of were trying to go younger and faster in training camp. And then when we got James Harden, it just kind of became leaning into the slow half-court methodical style that essentially favors him and Kawhi Leonard. So the risk at the end of the day was we let go of expiring contracts. And that could have been valuable to get something that we needed more potentially in the middle of the season. My thing is this. I don't think that we should have made the James Harden trade when we did. And I still stand by it now. I think we should have let it ride in the beginning of the season and seen how far we were from contention. Were we just Kawhi and Paul being healthy away from contention? How good was... Because there's a lot of people that think that there's no way with Russell Westbrook as your starting point guard you would have been anything close to a playoff team. Because they really don't believe in Russ. For his lack of a jump shot, for his erratic offense. I think that if you have Russ starting, it's just a totally different Russ. Is it good enough to get the 4 seed? Probably not. James Harden's a better basketball player at this stage of their careers. And he is much... Yeah, he is. But Russell Westbrook would give us a different element. I think we'd play a different way. Would have been faster. Would have helped Amir and Terrence more. And maybe Paul more. And then it just would have been interesting to see if Kawhi could have handled that pace, though. Would have made us better defensively, but offensively, I think we would have been like 15th or 16th in offensive rating, as opposed to top 5, which we were. So that's what I say to that. I don't think we would have had as good of a season, though, in the regular season. But I think we would have had expiring contracts to see, what do we need to improve on? So we were 4th in offensive rating. But what do we need to improve on at the deadline? And so that was unfortunate because now not only did we give up that, we gave up a 2028 first-round pick unprotected. And that's unfortunate because we need some picks, man. Some first-round picks. So that's unfortunate. So we did risk. And here was my biggest fear with the Harden trade. Why are we trading for more help to try to put all our eggs into the 2-1-3 basket when they haven't even shown they can stay healthy for the playoffs? And now we made that Harden trade all for Kawhi to still get hurt in the playoffs. So we just lost stuff for essentially nothing. And now we can't let James Harden walk for nothing. We have to re-sign him, which is like essentially leaning more into old and slow. So I think it was a big mistake. But that's just my opinion. I know people are going to hate on it because, it's easy to say when Kawhi gets hurt. We should have expected that. We should have expected there was a chance that Kawhi got hurt. That's exactly why we got James Harden. But I don't get it because if Kawhi's hurt, it means nothing anyway. I think they were just trying to, just in case he got hurt in the regular season, have James Harden there. But whatever. Now, coming up, though, going to be talking about our future. What position does making the James Harden trade put us in looking at the future? Going to be talking about that coming up. I got to tell you a little something about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. All right. So to finish off, let's talk about where this trade puts the Clippers in the future, the near future, because every trade, I mean, yes, this was a win-now trade. It was kind of an all-in for this season, and because Kawhi was injured again, we didn't really get to reap the benefits of it. Besides a better regular season, we went it one game further than last season. So that sucked. As far as James Harden himself, though, I mean, I think he was pretty professional. He had a slump in the second half of the season, but he played at an all-star level to me throughout the season. He did exactly what I thought he would do. At one point, he was playing even better than I thought he would, but then he hit that slump that kind of made his numbers even out. I think playoff-wise, he was a little better than I thought he would be. Just mainly the highs that he had. Games 4 and 1. He was really, really good. James averaged 17 points a game, 5 rebounds, 8.5 assists on 43% shooting, 38 from 3, 88 from the line. So, I mean, 43% from the field isn't great. It's less than what he shot in 2023, but it's better than what he shot in 2022. But yeah, and then 3-point wise, it was one of the highest 3-point shooting seasons of his career. It was, in fact, his third highest 3-point percentage ever. So not bad there. But, yeah, as far as the future. Well, we traded for James Harden on an expiring contract. So that means now we have to look to re-sign him because we don't want to lose him for nothing. We gave up a 2028 first-round pick for him and expiring deals. We just got to not overpay. How much is he going to want? That's major. And the market for him isn't that big. So he's going to probably need to just take what he can get. And I think it's going to be something like 3 years, $105 million. Or 3 years, $120 million. Something along those lines. I think the Clippers are going to try to make all their deals. Their goal is to try to make all their deals expire at the same time. I mean, look, we only gave up one unprotected first rounder for Harden, but I wish we still had that pick. And then the PJ Tucker situation, I mean, that's annoying. We have that $11 million contract on our books. So the future's not looking good. I mean, making that James Harden trade was not a move for the future. It wasn't. Because now you got to re-sign him. Because you're not just going to let him walk for free. And as I said, by trading for him, we did not get anything else at the deadline. We also stayed stagnant at the deadline, which was a big mistake. But let's see. I mean, the Clippers are going to try to get younger and give more of the young guys minutes, I would think, next year around 2-3 in Harden. But we'll see if Paul George even comes back. But they're going to try to get younger in some way, shape, or form. My question is, are the Clipper youngsters ready to play consistent minutes at a championship or bust expectation level throughout a season? Because it just feels like with the Kobe Browns and the Brandon Boston and stuff, they need to be developed. They need to work through mistakes, and we just don't really have the room for error when we're trying to shoot for a high seed and stuff like that. So, anyway, let me know what you think of the James Harden trade and how it's aged so far through one season. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper, LA Sports, and NBA content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Let me know what you think. By the way, keep suggesting episode ideas. I might do a mailbag this week. Let me know episode ideas, questions you want from me in the comments. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.